Hello and welcome to episode 473 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I am one of the co-founders here at ETR, and we are somehow, some way, drinking the tears of the GPP Bros yet again. And I really, really don't like to repeat topics on here. There's so much to talk about, and obviously it's boring to keep talking about the same things. But team play the best plays, just absolutely smashing yet again, is the biggest topic in DFS right now. So I wanted to address it again here at the top quickly. I'll start here. I've been playing NFL, DFS, cash seriously on DraftKings since 2017. My average score in cash before this year was roughly 145 points, 145. This year, I'm averaging 161 points per week. So what does that mean? Am I better this year than I've been in any of the previous 7 years? That would be cool, but I don't really think so. Even if I'm incrementally better, which I think I am, but even if I'm incrementally better, I'm not 16 points per week better. And it's an important point because the whole idea of playing a contrarian style is that there's so much chaos in the NFL on these low scoring weeks, which we get plenty of, where I score 100 points in cash or 120 points in cash. Contrarian tournament teams are only competing against a small fraction of the field and are much more likely to win a tournament. So, what's going on here? Why am I scoring 16 more points per week in cash? What's going on? I know no one wants to hear this. I know it's not a sexy answer. I just think there's a lot of randomness. It just so happens that somehow, some way, the best plays have been underpriced enough to the point where they're massively owned. And that's somewhat random. In other words, the pricing is really what drives everything. I'm extremely price sensitive when I play DFS. Josh Jacobs at 7,100 versus Josh Jacobs at 7,500 makes a huge difference. And so this past week, I actually thought Josh Jacobs was a slightly better play than Alvin Kamara. Straight up. Let's say that Jacobs was 7,000 and Kamara was 7,100. I for sure would have played Jacobs in cash. Jacobs would have been at least 25% owned in tournaments, probably closer to 30%. But instead, he's 7,500 and he's 13% owned and he busts with 7.4 points. Really similar to the week before, week 7, when we already talked about Leonard Fournette was overpriced at 7,700 against the Panthers. So he was only 11% owned, not part of team play the best plays. But Jacobs that week was wildly cheap. He was 6,500 against the freaking Texans. He goes off for 40 points. So if DraftKings had messed up Lenny's price instead of Jacobs, he would have been the chalk and fail. Now, I know the overarching question people have is, wait a minute, Adam, shouldn't we be playing some of the best plays in tournaments? Yes, of course. Absolutely. The whole idea of using correlation and sum ownership and product ownership, et cetera, is so that we can get a better understanding of how we can use the best plays thoughtfully. Hell, even the King Contrarian himself, Mike Leone, talked on Establish the Million about how the Dolphins pass game and Kamara were examples of players that were such great values at cost relative to their ceiling that you can play them profitably, even at 20 or 25% owned. I played Tony Pollard in tournaments this past week. I thought it was right. DJ Moore, an example of something that I would not play in tournaments. There's a big difference between Tony Pollard chalk and DJ Moore chalk in tournaments. A 30% owned Panthers wide receiver, it's not going to be good. He gets the Hail Mary, making it even worse for the GPP Bros. But look, man, people who have been around this game for a long time understand how often the best plays fail. It's the NFL. If I were a GPP Bro, wait, that's right. I have to keep reminding myself I am King GPP Bro. So as your humble King GPP Bro, I don't think we're seeing any great sea change in DFS. There will be chaos. And hopefully, if there's some miracle, I'll be there to capitalize on that chaos. And that's not to say that this is all easy, man. I mean, I'm sure like many of you, I am tied up in knots about what to do in tournaments. I can feel myself breaking, at times when I'm making teams. It's like, Adam, just turn your cash team into a GPP team, make it a stack and let's ride. I mean, the video that Dink did, hopefully you all saw it. It was so good. The video that Dink did, that the Any Given Sunday speech, if you haven't seen it, you got to go to Twitter and find it. It was obviously a joke, but in all seriousness, I actually think that it's needed. The speech was needed. And that's really the best part of any joke, by the way. There has to be some truth to it. Bible narrative is a joke, but you can see some truth to it. Gender Labs is a joke, but I still did research and did try to execute sexual positions that favor boys. There's truth in it. So yeah, the pep talk to the GPP bros to not just dump their strategy. I mean, hell, I fucking need the pep talk. So anyway, I don't want to drone on about this. I've talked about it on each of the last 2 solo pods in depth. Hopefully you caught that, and we can just move on. A couple other things from week 8 I wanted to mention. First, I thought there were some good examples this past week about how important understanding every single little injury and usage situation is. And that stuff is really important to me because I think that's a big part of where my edge is. For example, I know a lot of people this past week really liked Ramondre Stevenson. I saw people wanting to play Ramondre Stevenson in cash this past week. I thought people were underestimating, in terms of range of outcomes perspective, Damian Harris, who got phased out in week 7 because the Patriots got absolutely wrecked by the Bears. But in other situations, in situations where the Patriots have a lead, where it's close, I thought Harris's role would actually have a really big impact on Ramondre's usage. So given how many elite running back plays there were in that 6 to 7K range on DraftKings this past week, I didn't play any Ramondre, and I get that he got there, but Harris played a ton, and I feel good about the Ramondre fade. And there were smaller ones than that. I mentioned the Darrell Williams injury status on Twitter, and people were laughing at me. Who cares about Darrell Williams, Adam? I just thought if Darrell was active, they'd play him and Keontae Ingram. So that's not great for Benjamin. And so Darrell Williams ends up active. I didn't play any Usage was actually pretty good for but still, I thought that was right. And then another small one is Durham Smythe. I'm sure a lot of people don't even know who Durham Smythe is, but he has a real impact on Mike Gesicki's role. When Durham Smythe was out in week 6, Gesicki gets his best usage of the year. Smythe played in week 8, and yeah, Gesicki got the touchdown, but the usage was bad. Shout out Penn State. So I think there's a ton of ways that we help people at ETR. I think one of the biggest ones that we track all this stuff for you, save you the time and effort. Like if I had a real job, I have a wife and kids, I'm not fucking tracking Durham Smythe's injury status. Of course not. I'd pay the virgins at ETR to do that for me, funnel into the projections and the context around those projections, i.e. the shows and the articles, no brainer. 2 more small things from week 8. First, the Foster Moreau, Darren Waller situation reminded me of how few people react to late news. If Darren Waller gets ruled out on Friday, I think Foster Moreau would have been 20, 30% owned in the Millie Maker, especially in the context of this slate. But Darren Waller gets ruled out real late, like 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, and Foster Moreau comes in at 11%. Now, note that he was 22% owned in the 4K on DraftKings. High stakes people obviously are at their desktops at 11:30 Eastern on Sunday, like an alpha, ready to react to news like this. But at low stakes, I mean, that news is just so valuable when it comes in super late like that. Just something to remember. And second, the defense stuff. Yeah. Commanders against Sam Ehlinger and Texans against Malik Willis both were great plays, clearly. But it's fucking defense, It's so random. Like, people were shocked when I said on Sunday that I was fine with Arizona. I was fine with Detroit. I don't mind these bad defenses in likely shootouts. When you get the opposing quarterback dropping back 35 plus times, fine, I'll take it, whatever. And so the Commanders finished with 7 points. Texans finished with 8. Cardinals, who I played, finished with, I think, 6 or 8. Lions, the cheapest option, they get 3, despite giving up so many points to Tua. And I know some of you are saying, oh, Adam, that's just results oriented. That's not the right way to think about it. Well, that's wrong because the data is so abundantly clear. We can't accurately project or predict DST scoring over a large sample. It's just too random. I think there's some edge, some skill, and I talked about that a ton when I led with this topic a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I try not to let defense get in the way of what I want to play. So for example, in cash this past week, I preferred Kenneth Walker to Dameon Pierce, period. With Walker, I had to play Cardinals D. With Pierce, I could have gotten to Texans. Whatever. I'm just going to play Walker and not worry about defense. Speaking of cash, honestly, I thought this was a pretty shitty week for it. There were no cheap options whatsoever to play at running back or wide receiver. So it became so clear to everyone that playing a $4,000 Sam Ehlinger and punting a tight end was right. And so really, the whole week on DraftKings cash came down to whether you played Josh Jacobs or Alvin Kamara. And like I already said, I preferred Jacobs, but the $400 difference made a big difference for my team. And so I was fine with Kamara. And Kamara wins that battle by, 35 points. Just so crazy. But for more on my cash team and thoughts, head to the cash lineup review on the site. It is free, and I explain a lot more there. Tournaments in week 8. Yeah, I mean, Jesus, I can't talk about it anymore. I played 7 or 8 teams, didn't cash any. And I know I've said this before, but I'm able to shrug this stuff off, playing 7 or 8 tournament teams and returning $0. I'm able to shrug this stuff off easier than others, I think, mainly because I play so much cash. Like, I cannot imagine grinding, working, sweating all week and then emerging with stone $0. That would just depress me, discourage me, make me lose motivation. So add it to the list of the many reasons why I think, for me at least, playing cash and playing it seriously is right. All right. Need to get to listener questions before we do here. Want to remind everyone, we are at the midway point of the season. If you have not purchased a rest of season pass yet for our in-season product, our DFS product at Established to Run, we have lowered the price to reflect half the season left. We will have full DFS coverage through the Super Bowl. So that is about 21 weeks, if I recall correctly. And we are heading to week 9. Head to the subscribe page on the site and you'll see the link to the details there. All right, enough is enough. Let's get to everyone's favorite portion of the program, the listener questions. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. Question 1 from Age Model Labs says, as a 29-year-old recently single male who doesn't drink, what are some of your top tips to help find a significant other? My drinks over expectation in today's society does not seem to mesh well. Well, first, I love the username here, Age Model Labs. Good stuff. Second, yeah, our society is maddeningly, insanely, ridiculously obsessed with alcohol. Like, it's insane. I'm not really a big drinker. I drink, but I'm not a big drinker. I never really have been. I'll drink some here and there. I think being drunk is fun for like 45 minutes, and then I really do hate it. I really, really, really prefer drugs, weed, acid, mushrooms. I prefer that stuff by a massive margin over alcohol. By the way, this actually made me think of a funny story. When I was at Penn State, I think I was a sophomore. I was, 19 or whatever. I was talking to this girl in one of my classes and talking to her a bunch, whatever. Class is at like 10 in the morning. One day after class, I'm like, hey, why don't we, grab some beers and drink them at my place? So I had this shitty fake ID. It works. We get 12 beers. I go back. We go back to my house. Lived with a bunch of dudes, obviously. I mean, all we did was smoke and play video games. The thought of like an actual girl, a real life girl, like being in the house at 11 a.m., it was just insane. But anyways, so we get back to the house, start drinking in my room, pound like 3 beers in maybe 5 or 10 minutes, like a fucking idiot, of course. And of course, just a few minutes later, I'm in the hallway bathroom, puking. Not puke and rally. Like, I couldn't stop puking and I couldn't rally, just so absurd, so humiliating. I get back to the room like 20 minutes later and she's gone. Anyways, that's not to say that how alcohol affects my body and mind is the same for everyone. I know most people on earth love it, and that's cool. But I do hear you, Age Model Labs. It's tough to be out there in society if you don't drink at all. I will say that if you're looking for a real relationship, an actual significant other, as you said, I mean, my God, man, you don't want a girl that's obsessed with drinking. And same the other way. If I was a girl, I would not want to be with a guy who's obsessed with drinking. I really don't think it should be that hard to get out there as a 29-year-old dude and be like, hey, I don't drink, but let's still go out. If she's the right girl, she won't just accept that, but she'll love it, in a society full of meatheads smashing natty ice cans against their forehead and seeing how much they can possibly drink in one night. Like, I think you'll stand out. So good luck out there. Question 2 from Jackie Saunders. He says, have you considered seeing if you could move a line in your favor by betting the opposite side for a small amount? If you like player A's under in props, would having ETR subscribers all bet the over for $1 or something be enough to move it so you can hammer the other side? Yeah, Jackie, good question. So this is called a head fake in the betting industry, and it's very common practice as far as I can tell among big groups and market influencers. I know Billy Walters is famous for it. Harlabob has talked about it a ton too. Basically, they want the best line possible on, whatever, Commanders against the Packers. And they have an understanding of market dynamics. In other words, which books are copying which books' line moves, which books are influencing the entire market. So let's say everyone is just copying Chris or Pinnacle or Circa, and you earn a reputation as being a sharp at one of those books. They move the line when you bet. As soon as you bet, they move the line. So you bet 5 or 10K, whatever, on the Packers, the wrong side, the side you don't want. So you bet 5 or 10K on the Packers, whatever. Line moves towards the Packers. Everyone in the world copies Chris or Pinnacle or wherever you were betting. And then you get 100K or 500K or a million or whatever you want on the right side of the game, the side you actually wanted in the Commanders. That's all part of the game in high stakes betting, in professional betting. I think a lot of people, as sports betting kind of gets more popular in the United States, I think a lot of people are realizing that professional sports betting isn't even about winning bets, like that's like the bare minimum, being able to win. It's about getting accounts, not getting limited, finding the best line, understanding where lines are coming from. And yes, head fakes. So look, I wouldn't rule us out doing a head fake at some point on props. So books, if you're listening, beware. Like we're clearly have enough market influence and controlling a big enough part of the NFL and NBA props market right now to do it. The biggest thing that I'd say, which hopefully is obvious, is that you can't do the head fake and the real bet at the same book, just like a lock to fuck your account. So we'll see. Question 3 from Steez Kellerman. He says, 10-team home league, been running for a decade. A few league members don't care much. No draft prep, no grinding waivers, etc. Sunday morning, 30 minutes before lock, one team hadn't set their lineup. Commissioner decides to text them to set their lineup, and they do. Is he in the right, or is he a narc? I think every season-long league or most experience something along these lines. I started a fantasy football league with my boys in high school when we were 16 years old. I am 40 now, and the league is still running. It's run every year. But it's not the same. For the first 10 years it was running, I would say it was everything. It was all we talked about. The message board was the fucking best. I mean, constantly people ripping on each other, revealing crazy secrets on the bulletin board, constant chirping. I mean, it was great. It was all we did. Then we all started to have other things, work, wives, kids. For me, DFS, and the league just takes a back seat. I think, like anything in life, to make something good, it takes effort, a ton of effort and a ton of work, and that goes for fantasy or business or jokes or relationships or leagues with your boys or whatever. And honestly, at some point, there's just not enough fucking hours in the day, and it sucks. For me personally, the league I was in with my friends when I was 16, when I was 28 or whatever, it just couldn't be a priority for me anymore. I couldn't even be the commissioner anymore. So I'm one of the guys you're talking about. I'm one of the guys who doesn't grind waivers, who forgets to set my lineup, doesn't respond to trade offers, doesn't post on the board. Season-long fantasy and playing the league is just like not a huge priority for me anymore. And I hate being that guy. But again, there just aren't enough hours in the day. As for the actual question, I think for the integrity of the league, you owe it to the league, no matter how checked out you are, to have a lineup set. I always try to make sure that I have a lineup set, a valid lineup set. And if you can't do that, there has to be consistency. In other words, it's not right for me to not set my lineup one week, but then set it the next. That's not fair. So I think, as for texting him to set his lineup before lock, I think it's probably fine. I don't think you can tell them to make pickups. You can't tell them who to start. You can't let them change anything before lock. But setting your lineup, it has to be consistent. And so if the commissioner is willing to text somebody, go through every matchup, make sure everybody's team is set, with no bye weeks or injuries or whatever before lock. If the commissioner is willing to do that and text everybody and have it be consistent, that's okay. To me, it's just got to be consistent. Question 4 from Aging Fantasy Dad. He says, Adam, I had kids later in life, first at 38 years old, second at 41. I'm about to turn 42 and spend life constantly exhausted and in moderate physical pain. Do kids ever stop making you feel this way, or am I doomed because of my PAOE, parenting age over expectation? Yeah, I see two sides to this. What I really believe deep in my heart is that having kids as late as possible in life is optimal, like no doubt. The best years of your life, the time to get out there, be active, travel, be spontaneous, do wild shit, explore, have fun. That's your 20s, 30s, early 40s. But if you have kids when you're 25, that's your life, man. There's no more getting out there. There's no more spontaneity. Every dollar you have goes to kids. So yes, Aging Fantasy Dad, I get that having kids at age 40 is exhausting. And the older you get, the harder it is in that sense. But I still think that you did it right, man. They'll get to be 7 years old. And, my oldest is 7 now. He's mostly self-sufficient. So they'll get to that age and you'll be able to look back and you'll be able to chill and look back at those extra 10 years that you got kidless and be like, damn, man, those are some of the best years of my life, and now I had that experience. And then I also get to have the experience of being a father. To me, it's a no-brainer GTO decision. Question 5 from T RKMJ. He says, how do you feel about this new $20 per month to have a blue checkmark rule that Elon came up with? Are you going to keep it or what? Ha ha ha. Yeah, I actually haven't had a chance to look and read about all the Twitter Elon stuff closely. I've just been hearing drips and drabs about the plans. Obviously, I love Twitter. I think anyone who is serious about fantasy sports needs to be on Twitter. I think if you use lists correctly and almost never use the reply button, it's incredible. But yeah, I mean, anytime there's change to something you rely on so much, it's certainly a bit scary. I, I do think Elon will be a net positive for the platform. I mean, this dude is literally like saving the world by making electric cars cool and getting us back into space. I don't think improving the experience on fucking Twitter and helping Twitter actually make money or more money will be that hard. But sure, there's some risk that he fucks it up, and that scares me for sure. As for the $20 a month to retain the verified account, I'd have to look more into it. But I mean, obviously, I'm happy to pay it. I do think being verified lets people know you're a real person. You know, you have accountability. Twitter knows exactly who you are. I think people are more likely to follow you. You know, it's a no-brainer to pay. But to me, I think Twitter would be better if everyone was verified. Everyone. Then you don't get these hateful trolls or stupid bots messing up the experience for everyone else. Because let's be honest, the vocal minority in a lot of things in life, but for sure on social media, the vocal minority can fuck it up for everyone. I listen to podcasts all the time. I read Twitter. I read articles. I enjoy all that stuff, but I never, ever comment, even though I enjoy it. The brain dead mouth breathers are the ones that are trolling and being mean and being unreasonable and always being negative. Would they do that if everyone knew who they were? I don't know. But I really do think that my Twitter experience is different than most people's because of the two simple things I already mentioned. I only use lists, and I never, ever just let the algorithm feed me shit. And second, I literally never engage in debate on Twitter. Like, never. It's just not the right platform for it. I see people say stuff I disagree with. I'm tempted to hit the reply button. People are in my mentions saying ridiculous stuff all the time. I try not to read it. I try not to even look at the mentions. But I really try not to hit the reply button ever, even if somebody says something completely wrong or whatever. So if you do those two things, use lists so that you don't get the algorithm fed and you don't use the reply button, it's an incredible platform just for information, I think. So good luck, Elon. I know I obviously have a lot at stake at it working out with Elon in control. And so earnest good luck. Question 6 from Frankie. He says, I walk my dogs 2 to 4 miles every day for the last 3 years. Last week was the first time ever the poop bag broke on me. Should I chop off my entire hand or just the infected finger? Yeah, it's a shame you have to lose your finger here, Frankie. It really is, because this could have been avoided. Imagine using those thin plastic poop bags when you can feel the warmth of the literal dog shit that you're touching. Actually, I wouldn't even know what it feels like because longtime listeners know that I use these special bags, these dispose-a-scoop bags, the best invention in the history of mankind, like walking on the moon, reaching the top of Mount Everest, you know, the internet, and these poop bags. Those are the most important things that we can do as humanity. These poop bags are really incredible. I swear, I never would have gotten a dog if I hadn't found those no-touch poop bags. And they're not paying me or anything, you know. It's the way a gentleman picks up poop. So get it together, Frankie. Question 7 from SRCH. She says, has your approach to DFS changed since the $250,000 takedown? Do you find yourself trying to recreate the magic and falling short? Are you more aggressive with money in contests? Curious to know if your perspective has changed. Yeah, I'd say no, not really. I'm not really playing any bigger. Maybe I'm playing a little bit bigger, playing a few more tournament teams each week, but not a ton more. I think I always had a realistic perspective on it. I ran like the sun, the actual sun itself, for that win last year. Does that mean that I'm some all-world DFS tournament player? Of course not. I think I play well. That doesn't mean I'm entitled to winning tournaments because it's so hard. And also like I'm still so serious about cash. And I think to be really good at tournaments, it's hard to do both. And I do think that playing cash hurts my GPP play. Like I don't spend all week thinking about tournaments. I really don't. I spend all week thinking about cash. And then I make some tournament teams on Sunday morning that I think are good, but I'm certainly way more focused on Sunday morning on my cash team. But that's not going to change for me because cash is just so much higher stakes than tournaments and it's better action for me, personally. So yeah. Last question we're going to do today. Question 8 comes from A-Raven52. A-Raven52 is a longtime high-stakes DFS player, well-known 6'6" sick fuck. He says, the time has come to make our second child. Through research sponsored by Gender Labs LLC, I have concluded that finishing deep while in the position of a dog gives us our best odds of a boy. Problem: wife often gets back thrown out or complains of pain, quote unquote, too deep in such position. Huge dong, I know. Question: how do I ensure having the best odds of continuing my family name while not leaving my wife in pain? Do we go with a lot of little pumps to work up the pressure and then finish with one long, deep one at climax? Signed, lifelong Gender Lab subscriber, A-Raven52. Oh, man. One of the best questions we've had. It reminds me of, did a question maybe like 3 or 4 years ago where somebody submitted a question. It was obviously a joke, but somebody submitted a question about falling in love with their father-in-law and how that affects their DFS play. This question is right up there with that one. One of the best humble brags you can find. I actually don't have an answer here for A-Raven. I just had to read this question because it was so good. Well done, man. Godspeed. All right. That is going to do it for this edition of the Solo Pod. I'll be back later tonight with Silva for Team by Team Pods. We do have a goal of 30,000 YouTube subscribers before the end of NFL season. Would appreciate if you guys can go in there, hit the subscribe button. Would help us out a ton. For producer Luke, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.